Hey Emily, good morning. How are you doing, girl? So today is October 23rd. It is a Tuesday, 2018, and I'm here sitting before you, grateful that you've taken the time to click on the YouTube link and welcome me into your life. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I do. Today I have an interesting subject to talk about. I've been you may know that I'm really interested in self development, personal growth. These things are really important to me. I really value the enlightenment that comes from studying psychology and getting additional insight into my life. And today, I'm experimenting with a new idea called FIT training, which stands for functional imagery training. And anyway, I think we'll talk a little bit about that after we do the peaceful living excerpt. So here we go. So today is October 23rd, and here's the quote for the day. We lie loudest when we lie to ourselves. Eric Hoffer. I'm not quite sure what that quote means. I have no idea. All right. So the subtitle for Mary Mackenzie's passage is Noticing What You Value. Oh, I can't afford a weekly massage. Oh no, I don't travel. I just can't afford it. Have you ever noticed how often people say that they can't afford something? When we say this, we usually mean that we choose different priorities for our money. We make choices about what is important to us. As I say, I can't afford a weekly massage. If I say I can't afford a weekly massage, but I spend $500 a month on health insurance, I choose to meet my need for security over my need for nurturance. If I choose to avoid taking exotic trips, but I spend $30,000 on a new car, I choose to meet my need for predictability and safety over my need for fun and adventure. If I don't go out to lunch with my friend because I want to make sure I have enough money to feed my family that night, I choose to contribute to my family's life rather than meet my need for connection with my friend. How do you spend your money? What does it tell you about what you value most? The more consciously we make choices that are in alignment with our values, the more peaceful our lives will be. Oh yeah, that's a really good point. So the thought for the day is notice how you spend your money today and what that tells you about your priorities. Wow, that's really interesting. I think that's a fascinating idea, and that is using how you spend your money during the day to get insight into what you value. The other day, that reminds me, the other day I bought some cologne. I bought Cool Water by Davidoff. Now this is actually a decades old cologne that I recently rediscovered, and I found that I actually really enjoy the smell of that cologne on my body. And it costs like $30, which is cheap by cologne standards. Really cheap because it's old, right? It's an it's a it's almost a traditional scent. But I was really struggling to prioritize the cologne and buy some. It's pretty funny. It's not very funny. It's it's basically about my values. I really value smelling good, sure, and there are lots of ways to smell good, and cologne is one of many different ways. And I just hadn't really prioritized buying a cologne with my money as much as I have recently. Now, I also went to Calvin Klein, a store at the Pismo Beach outlets, and I smelled another cologne. It was Calvin Klein Aqua, which, wow, smelled really good. And I really love that smell, though the price was like sky high. It was like over $100 for just a few ounces. Of course, I said no to that. I was struggling to spend $30 on Davidoff Cool Water. So, it's kind of interesting where we draw the line for when we value something. Like I value sense and smell. I really love smells. I think when we were together, when we spent a lot of time together, one of the things we do is we'd go into grocery stores and we'd smell the candles, or department stores, and we'd smell the candles, and we'd do so together, and we'd share the candles that we liked, and we'd ask each other to smell them, and that was a fun little game we played. And I got the sense that you have a really you derive a lot of pleasure from your sense of smell, and you like good smelling things too. And so anyway, that's just something I value. It was just something that came to mind. There were some other good points here too. I like how it said here, if you choose to avoid taking exotic trips, but I spend $30,000 on a new car, I choose to meet my need for predictability and safety over my need for fun and adventure. I find I do that too. I don't go on a lot of exotic vacations or exotic trips. And I think a lot of that has to do with my interest in predictability. I like having a predictable life day to day. It's very calming and relaxing to me to do relatively the same thing every day. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want excitement and go on trips. I tend to go on day trips which, of course, are a little bit more predictable. And, maybe one of these days I'll really get the travel bug, and I want to travel to amazing places like Italy and Greece and Sweden. Who knows? I'm just not there yet. I'm enjoying my day trips and exploring everyday adventures around my local area. It's really amazing how many fun adventures you can have just around your house as you walk around to different places. You can call it, I think it's called urban hiking, where you essentially just hike around your town, hike around the block, hike around your city. And that can be a lot of fun, exploring new areas and getting to know the places around you. Anyway, I find that fun. To me, that is sort of it's a blend of adventure and predictability at the same time, and it's something I enjoy. There's also another point here that I really liked. It says, if I don't go out to lunch with my friend because I want to make sure I have enough money to feed my family at night, I choose to contribute to my family life rather than to meet my need for connection with my friend. Oh, and the point is, how do you spend your money? And so I offer up that question to you. I'm curious. I wonder, how do you spend your money? What do you spend your money on? Here are some guesses. My guess is that you spend your money on decorations and maybe clothes and artwork, art supplies, decorations, art supplies, and clothes. That is my guess about where you spend your money. And I wonder, am I right or not? If I'm not, feel free to send me a text or write me a letter. I'd be curious about how you spend your money. I'm really not sure. Oh, maybe you spend your money on music. That's a possibility. Now, where do I spend my money? Well, lately I've been spending some of my disposable income on clothing. Last weekend I went shopping, which was long overdue, by the way. I bought some shoes, which I haven't bought shoes in like a year and a half. And then, so it was nice for me to buy some shoes. It's a relief because my shoes were looking pretty ratty, pretty old, pretty beat up. Let's see. Where else do I spend my money? I spend my money on food, I think. Now, it's kind of funny. You probably know that I'm a calorie counter. And so I eat a specific amount of calories every day. And it's not a lot. It's just a very moderate amount of food. And I produce all this food in my kitchen. I make every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner in my kitchen. And I take my lunch in a bag to work, right? And sometimes I pack a dinner too. And because sometimes I'll have activities to do after work. And I find it convenient to have a packed dinner. So, and the kind of foods that I've been buying lately, I bought some rutabaga lately, and I've bought some Chinese eggplant, and what else have I bought recently? I think I might have bought some squash. No, I bought some potatoes. Because I've been really interested lately in roasting vegetables. I am loving roasting vegetables, particularly since now I've got this silicone mat. I don't know, I might have talked to you about this before, but I got this new silicone mat. I place it on my cookie sheet, and I now am able to roast vegetables with no mess and almost no cleanup. It is amazing. It's basically a miracle. Before when I roasted vegetables on my cookie sheet, when I did roast those vegetables, they would stick right to the cookie sheet. Even if I applied, say, cooking oil and so in order to prevent that, what I would do is I would lay down a layer of aluminum foil. And aluminum foil works great. There's no mess. Basically, you crumple up the aluminum foil and put it in the trash. And then I thought, from an environmental standpoint, I didn't really like the idea of using aluminum foil that often. For me, aluminum is a valuable resource. There's a lot of energy that went into creating that aluminum, mining it out of the earth, refining that ore into metal, and then turning it into aluminum foil and then sending it to me. Honestly, I don't know how aluminum foil is so inexpensive because it seems to me that it ought to be really expensive. Anyway, I didn't like the idea of throwing aluminum foil away. And so I thought to myself there had to be a better solution. And I've got this silicone mat now. And it's fantastic. I love it so much. It's really changed how I eat because now roasting vegetables is so much more convenient, so much easier for me to produce. I just turn on the oven, throw on some vegetables. It can be anything from like cauliflower to squash to potatoes. I mean, first of all, these foods that I'm talking about are really satisfying, homey foods. They're to me, they have a lot of meaning. And, I love rutabagas. They're basically like potatoes. And And I'm really going to be experimenting with eggplant and what I can do with that as I roast it. I like the idea that it's a fairly low calorie vegetable, and it's a vegetable I'm unfamiliar with. And it looks like it would be a really easy roasting vegetable. So I'm really getting into roasting vegetables now. And of course, I cannot forget the premier roasted vegetable of all time, which is French fries. I've been making lots of French fries. French fries for breakfast, French fries for lunch, French fries for dinner. And what's great about my French fries is that I don't use cooking oil at all. There's no need. I've got my silicone mat. You know, the most I do is I don't know, use a salt shaker and spread some salt on it, on the roasted potatoes, and then I dip those potatoes in ketchup, which I love. I love ketchup. And so, anyway, I've really been enjoying roasting foods in my oven. So, really convenient, really wonderful. What am I talking about? Oh, how do you spend your money? I don't know. Okay, so the more consciously we make choices that are in alignment with our values, the more peaceful our lives will be. And this is something that is critically important. Aligning your actions with values is important. Values are what give your life meaning. Acting in accordance with those values give your life meaning. And so it's important, for me, values are like the rails. You know, the rails of your life as you're moving through your life. Your values give you some direction. They help you focus your time and energy and attention. And so it's really important to sort of get a sense of what your values are. What is important to you? And then adapt your behavior in alignment with your values. In fact, and there's a word called valuing. And this is how I use the word valuing. For me, when it comes to valuing something, it's about taking action. So if you value pears, valuing pears means to eat pears. The word valuing is an indicator of certain actions. So this is how I use the word valuing. So if I want to value something, it means that I will take discrete, explicit, direct, physical action in order to sort of gain or seek that value. And so I try to do valuing throughout the day. And it's just a word that references my actions in accordance with a certain value. And so anyway, that's an interesting hint for you about how I'm using language now, or recently. So let's get back to that topic that I mentioned earlier in the morning. I talked about FIT training, which was functional imagery training. And it's something I discovered recently in an article that I read on the internet relating to diet. Now, I'm not necessarily focused on diet right now any more than usual, but the article in the news talked about how people who use functional imagery training lost more weight than people who were utilizing motivational interviewing. Now, you may not be familiar with motivational interviewing, and it's okay. It's just a set of techniques in order to help people achieve their goals. And it turns out that using imagery is a very effective way to motivate people to achieve goals. And in fact, I've been using imagery recently to help me achieve some of my daily goals. Goals are just like for me, just like getting up in the morning, taking a quick shower, standing up straight, I've been working on my posture lately and other goals that I have. And I've been using imagery to achieve those goals. And here's what's amazing about imagery. We as human beings use imagery all the time to achieve our goals. Quite often we'll imagine what a goal looks like in order to get motivated to accomplish it. We'll imagine what our goals are, and we'll imagine ourselves sort of moving along the path to achieving that goal. Well, I'm deciding to use imagery more intentionally throughout my day. And it's having a really strong and beneficial effect on my life. And I wanted to pass this information along to you. What I've been discovering about imagery is that imagery in the mind has two purposes. Number one, what an image does is that the more that an image comes to mind, the more that you focus on that image, the more motivated you are to toward that image, the more motivation you have relating to that image. And so, with that, there's also another way that images help. Images help when it comes to internal rehearsal. That is, they can help you sort of define actions that you need to take in order to reach a goal. They're sort of, your mind uses these images and aligns the body and your behavior around these images to move toward a certain path. So there's almost like a dual purpose of an image. One, it increases motivation. Two, it instructs behavior. And so these are two very important aspects of accomplishing goals. Number one is being motivated. And that's the most important thing. You got to be motivated. If you want to do anything in life, if you want to get a degree, you want to get a job, you want to make friends, you want to write a book, it doesn't matter what. You want to lose weight, you want to eat better, you need motivation. Motivation is the key. And with enough motivation, you can get the action and the desire and the energy you need to accomplish your goal. So motivation, that it's also described in common culture as heart or courage or other. It's that motivation, it's that energy that to get things done, to make things happen. If you have motivation, say if you wanted to be happier, and if you had an infinite level of motivation, you would definitely reach your goal, right? Another aspect of imagery is that it helps you sort of define what your actions are going to be. It sort of helps you figure out what the steps are in your behavior. One thing that I am reminded of is how people learn to walk. Now, how do babies learn to walk is a question I have for you. Do adults describe to babies using words and sentences about how to move their left foot 30 degrees forward and then their right foot 30 degrees forward, and then to shift their weight 80% on the left side and then 80% on the right side? No, that's not how babies learn to walk. Babies learn to walk through mimicking. They find a model and they use imagery. They are imagining what it might look like to walk, and they are trying to mimic that walking by observing other people walking. They're looking at their gait and how they make their steps and the timing, and that's what they're doing. It's largely a visual process. Babies learn to walk largely through a visual process. They use imagery, and I think they use imagery for motivation too. But it's imagery which sort of helps babies decide how to behave, how to take action in order to be able to walk. So with these two powerful aspects of imagery, how it instructs behavior and how it motivates, these two things are really powerful. So what I've been doing lately is I've been using imagery to do everyday kind of things and motivate myself to do everyday kind of things. And it's really working. Now, I've used other techniques before to help motivate me with to do things. For example, I used to use mantras, and I do still use mantras. A mantra is just a repeated phrase. It keeps an idea in your mind in the form of a sentence. You use your inner voice, and you just recall that inner voice. You bring that inner voice to mind. It has something like productivity might be a word that I would say frequently throughout the day, and that would remind me to be productive. It would remind me to check my to-do list. It would remind me to check my calendar. It would remind me to look around and scan around me for things that are out of place so I can put them back into place again. So a mantra, like saying the word productivity a lot, helped me to be more productive during the day. It's just a good reminder, right? But I have this idea that using imagery during my day will help me be even more productive. And what that means, how would I do it? How would I use imagery to help me be more productive through the day? Well, what I would do is throughout the day, I would imagine myself taking productive action. And I would just imagine myself being productive throughout the day, taking real, discrete, actionable actions. And I would just do a mental rehearsal. I would try to make those images bright, and they would be multi-sensory images. That is, these images would incorporate an emotional component, right? I would imagine how I would feel or how I would look as I felt an emotion related to completing a task I wanted to complete. And I would also imagine every step of the way. I would imagine visually what it would look like as if a movie camera were looking at me taking steps toward my goal. I would imagine myself taking those steps as if, like I mentioned, a movie camera was looking at me. That would increase my motivation, and also would give me some instruction about how to behave to achieve that goal. And I think here's one of the more critical ideas. If a barrier arose between where I was and where the goal is, if a barrier arose, what I could do is I could imagine that barrier being there, and the actions that I would take to go around the barrier. Not only the actions I would take to go around the barrier, but maybe even I would imagine, say, the emotional reaction I would feel. I'd try to imagine the sensory inputs that I would feel and sense as this barrier arose, and I would imagine how I would constructively respond to that barrier. And then continually imagine how I would surpass that barrier and then reach the goal. And I could imagine multiple barriers and then how I would react to each of those barriers as a way to do some internal rehearsal so that when those barriers arose, I would know how to behave in order to move around them and achieve my goal. So as you can tell, I've given some thought to how this works. And I have really high expectations, really high hopes for this method. I think it has the potential to be rather life-changing in terms of helping me develop a stronger sense of self-discipline. And, what more could I want? I'm always trying to improve my levels of self-discipline so that I can be more productive and get what I want and satisfy my needs. So anyway, that's a little bit about functional imagery training, and I'm going to try to learn more about using imagery throughout the day to increase motivation and to decide what behaviors to use to achieve my goals. And so it's just something I'm really excited about. And now we can move on to something else. So I got my Kindle here, and let's pull together some question and answer. This is the question and answer period where I will talk a little bit. I'll answer some questions from a book that I've got. I'll talk a little bit about myself and give you a little bit of insight into who I am as a person so that you know me a little bit better. So the question is, question number 76 is, do you have any siblings? And I answered that question last time. Yes, I've got 6. Question number 77, if not, do you wish you did? I can modify that question. Question number 77, if not, do you wish you did? Do I wish I had, how about this question? Do I wish I had more or less siblings? That's actually an interesting question. Honestly, I don't have any opinions about that. I don't think I necessarily want any more. Having 5 is just fine. Do I wish I had any less? Again, I don't wish I had any less. I'm glad about the amount of siblings that I have. I wouldn't necessarily want to have less of them. I wouldn't necessarily want to have more. I wouldn't necessarily want to have less. So I guess I'm fine. Question number 78. Do you have or want children? And that question is yes, I've got you, Emily. Hello, welcome. So yes, I have children. Do I want children? No, I wouldn't say that I particularly want children right now. I'm good, thanks. And question number 79 is how many? How many children would I want? I'm fine with the number of children I have right now. 1, you. Question number 80. Do you want a big wedding or prefer to keep it simple? Well, first of all, I've been married twice, divorced twice. And the weddings that I had were, the second one with Sheila was rather simple. The first one I had was a little bit more elaborate. And but I don't necessarily have a preference between one or the other. So I think both have their utility and interest, and so I'm okay either way. And since I'm not really looking to get married again, I don't think that question is that relevant to me. So in fact, that's an interesting question. Miguel, are you interested in getting married again? And my answer to that question is no, I'm really not. I've been there, done that. Once you've been married twice, I think that's probably good enough. That's all I basically need. I'm not sure I need any more than that. Yeah, I don't think I do. So I'm good. Question number 81. What would your ideal partner be like? Whoa, that is a really deep question. What would my ideal partner be like? Oh my goodness. There's so many ways to approach that question. Right now, I don't know. I mean, I can say a few things. They're mainly guesses, but everybody's different. It's really amazing, astounding really, how different people are. When you really get down to it, it's hard to tell. I guess if I were to talk about my ideal partner, here's some words that I would use. I'd want that person to be gentle and have a positive attitude. Those are 2 things that are important to me. Really important to me. I'd want that person to be empathic, compassionate about emotional pain and that their partner might be going through. And I'd like them to be patient and understanding and forgiving, particularly forgiving, accepting of the other partner. I'd like my partner to be brave. This is something that I've only recently come to realize, that I am wishing for a courageous partner. You know, I only have come to realize that recently. And, perhaps I'm wanting my partner to be courageous in ways that I have difficulty being courageous. That might be true. Humor, but humor is not that important to me. I mean, it's generally important. I like lightheartedness. Lightheartedness, I think, would be more appropriate than humorous. Definitely lighthearted. And I'd like them to be interested in learning. I'd like them to be lifelong learners. I'd also like them to have a focus on self-development. Personal productivity would be nice. That would definitely help us mesh together. The focus on self-development and self-growth, in my mind, is really strong. And also, not only does that have to be, say, a dominant characteristic, but I also think this love of learning ought to be a dominant characteristic too. There's something about, I think there seems to be a combination of love of learning and what was the other thought? Love of learning. Oh, I don't know. I'll move on. But, optimism and love of learning and self-development, I think, are really important to me. There's also another thing. I would like that person to be a very good communicator. I'd like them to be a very good speaker and especially a very good listener. That's also very important to me. Yeah. And, also what would be great is if they could be more of a social butterfly. I would like them to be very socially inclined, have a lot of social intelligence and emotional intelligence. I would appreciate that. Maybe I could learn some tips and tricks from them about how to improve my communication skills and social skills. That would be great. So, that's a list of adjectives that describes what I'd like a future partner to be, if there is one. Okay, question number 82. What do you generally like about the opposite sex? Boy, that's an interesting question. What do I generally like? Well, I'll just say a few things that come to mind. Well, what do I generally like? Well, the beauty. It's really amazing how beautiful women are. Of course, men are beautiful too. Human beings really are rather beautiful. So, what else? What else do I generally like about the opposite sex? What I'm finding is that some of the ideas that are coming to mind are very gender specific. They're very gender related. So I would guess when it comes to a trait that I like in women it is compassion. So I like this idea of compassion and kindness. So beauty, compassion, and kindness. I think those are the traits that I like the most in the opposite sex. That's question number 82. Question number 83. What do you generally dislike and why? Okay. What do I generally dislike and why? Question 83. This is an interesting question. Okay, well, a few things came to mind. Sloth. I don't care for sloth. This whole idea about relaxing in front of the television set and watching Netflix show after Netflix show. I just cannot get behind that. So I generally dislike the idea of sloth, right? I'd rather be up and at 'em and doing things. So that's an idea that I generally dislike. Um, what else? What other things do I generally dislike? Oh, why don't I? The question is, why don't I like sloth? Well, because there's so much of value in making the most of every moment, and there's really a value in being effective in the world. To me, the value of being effective in the world is really strong. Oh, here's another thing I generally dislike. I generally dislike a disparaging of education and a disparaging of learning. I think learning is what human beings do. It's one of our greatest virtues. And to be a lifelong learner to me is something that's essential. And anyone who is sort of anti-education or anti-learning or has a bias against learning new things and more things, I generally dislike that. I cannot get behind that. So that is something I generally dislike. So what are the two things that I generally dislike? Sloth. How should I say? I wish there was a better word for it. I don't want to say laziness, but maybe that's it, because laziness has sort of a judgment connotation. Passivity, maybe that's it. Although I can be passive in some ways. I'm just going to say sloth. So sloth and anti-education, these sentiments that relate to anti-education. Yeah. I also generally dislike substance use. I don't know. I don't know what it is about it, but for me, it speaks. It's what arises for me is this idea about something is out of control. You know, it's about giving up control to something else. It's about giving up decision-making ability, giving up decision-making authority, and sort of, for some reason, it strikes me as being sort of giving up. And so I just don't care for it. I dislike it. So sloth, anti-education, anti-intellectualism. That's how I call it. Sloth, anti-intellectualism, and substance use. To me, those are like the big three things that I dislike. And those are the reasons, and I'll just review them. When it comes to sloth, it's about being less effective in the world. I don't care for that. When it comes to anti-intellectualism, it's also about giving up. It's about denying the very thing that helps people be effective in the world and provides meaning to the world. It's like turning your back on something like that. And then substance use, again, is about giving up control of one's life to something else, some inert object. So anyway, those are the three things that I dislike that are coming to mind anyway. All right, so let's see what's next here. What's the next question? Question number 84. Are you a fan of reality TV? Okay, I don't have a television set, so I am not a fan of reality TV. Now, I have watched reality TV in the past. Like I watched Jersey Shore for a little while on MTV. And you know what? I liked it. I thought it was enjoyable. I thought it was compelling. And it was so unpredictable. I couldn't believe it. And there were aspects of those people's lives. I felt like I was sort of looking into their lives, sort of spying as an invisible person into their lives. And, I must admit, I enjoyed it. It was interesting getting an insight into other people and not having to live with them. I've been married a couple times, and that means that I've had a live-in girlfriend, and there's a lot to learn from seeing a person move throughout their day in a minute to minute manner. And there's a lot to learn about about good habits and bad habits. And I sort of felt that same way when I was watching reality television, that I was definitely learning about how these people organize their lives. And I think there's something valuable in that. So, and there's also some other ones. I also watched, what was it, Survivor? Oh yeah, that was pretty interesting too. So yes, I can say that I am a fan of reality television. Now, I don't have TV at the moment, and I'm not watching any reality TV shows at the moment, but I can see its benefit. I think it is quite interesting and instructive. It's certainly a unique idea, and I appreciate it. I think in some ways I like it more than scripted television. Although, I'll tell you what, I really like scripted television, especially comedy series like Seinfeld and Friends, and I enjoyed Happy Days, watching the Fonz. And I enjoy a lot of those TV shows, those comedies. The scripted ones are quite good. And unscripted shows are also quite good. Reality TV shows, great. Okay, so what's the next question? Question 85. Would you ever want to be on television? Well, I think I've been on television. Would I ever want to be on TV? I don't have a particular interest in being on television. If I was ever on a TV show, maybe I would like to be on the Ellen DeGeneres show. That sounds like a fun time. Or maybe I'd be on late night with a late night show. That'd be kind of like an interview show. I wouldn't mind wouldn't mind being interviewed on television. That would be fine. I would definitely not want to be on a news program for any reason, except for perhaps winning the Nobel Peace Prize. But I don't really have a strong desire to be on television. If I did have a strong desire to be on television, then I probably would be on television. But it's not something that I think about a lot. It's not something that's important to me. Question 86, have you ever been to a TV show? And yes, I have been to a television show while it was being taped. One was, I think it was a program called Seamstress Runway. I think it was a show about being on a runway in the fashion industry. And I went to Hollywood Studios, a studio in Hollywood, and I signed up to be part of the audience, and it took a lot of hours out of my day. And I watched the show happen as they took take after take after take. And it was a show where people were judging costumes, or I think they were judging performances of some kind. It was Project Runway. I think it was Project Runway, or it was related to Project Runway. It had something to do with costumes and performance, I'm not sure. And not just costumes, but designing clothes, something like that. So, yeah, I've been to a TV show. Now, have I been to any other TV show besides that? Well, I think I've been, there are roving reporters that move around the city. And at times, I think I've been captured on video at events of some local importance. So I've been to festivals where local reporters might have shown my image in the background, or I might have been to, say, competitions, like trivia competitions or things like that, where there's been reporters that broadcast live on television. So, question number 87, are you a collector? I'm not really a collector. In fact, I'm the opposite of a collector. I like to fancy myself a minimalist. And so what that means is I try not to collect intentionally. Occasionally I've got these ideas like, wouldn't it be nice to collect dishes or glasses or toys or who knows what, video games? And I always come back to this idea that I appreciate a minimal lifestyle, an uncluttered lifestyle. In fact, if you come to my home, you'll see in my apartment that there are a lot of empty spaces. Those are there intentionally. I like to at least meditate on the potential of an empty space in my home. I have a rather small apartment, and it's not necessarily filled to the brim with furniture and stuff and collector's items. In fact, it's quite a minimal decorative scheme, and I like it that way. I like things to be simple. I like things to be easy to grab out of the cabinets. Now, that just saying that right now reminds me about how I need to organize my cabinets in my home. So that's definitely something I want to do soon. So my focus is on minimalism, and so to answer the question, am I a collector? The answer is no. Now, if there is anything that I do collect, I collect old emails and I collect photographs. If there's anything that I collect, it's photographs. I like to have bunches and bunches of photographs at my disposal. So I've got, Google Photos, where I've got a collection of photos. I've got photographs on a hard drive that I have, an external hard drive. I like to keep photos. To me, photographs are really important. They're basically a document, a record of the history they are a record of the history of your life, and they often record the good times, and I find that really valuable. I like to spend time reflecting on those good times and looking at those older pictures. To me, they give me a good insight about where I was and where I am and the progress I've made over time. So yes, I collect photographs. So there's almost nothing else that I collect other than photographs. Okay, question number 88. What are some of your hobbies? So that's a good question. What are some of my hobbies? Well, one of the things I've been doing right now is sewing. I've been doing some sewing, but just very little of it. One hobbies might be fashion and style. Now, that's not to say that I've got the most stylish wardrobe. In fact, that's probably not true. But I do like thinking about fashion and style, and I think there's a lot of potential there. And so I like the idea of decoration, self-decoration, and costume. And, I only dabble in those things very minorly. I hope to dabble in them a little bit more in the future. So that's exciting to me. So let's call it fashion is a hobby of mine. Sewing machines are a hobby of mine. Reading is another hobby of mine. Surfing the internet, is that a hobby? Gadgets, gadgetry, working with gadgets, electronic gadgets. I like electronic gadgets of all kinds. Anything to do with monitoring, like a Fitbit or things like that. Self-improvement, hey, that's a hobby, right? Another hobby of mine is an interest in communication. All right, let's see what's next. Question 89. Have you ever been taken to the hospital for prolonged periods? So, yeah, I was in the hospital as an inpatient one time in my life. And it was because of like a stomach bug, like a stomach flu. And I never really thought it was that critical a problem. But I think the problem occurred when I went on a trip, a vacation, a field trip with my school. I think it was in middle school. I think we visited White Sands National Monument in Colorado, and we were in Taos, and we took a bus trip out there, and I think there was a swimming pool that had some. I think my guess is that there was something in the swimming pool when we went swimming. And when I came back to Taos, I had a really bad stomach flu, and it was so bad my mom ended up taking me to the hospital. And I basically remember lying in bed in the hospital for a while. And I think I remember speaking to my parents about it, and my mom in particular, I think they were both afraid for me for some reason. But I was such a young kid. I was only in middle school. I don't think I really realized the gravity of the situation. But somehow I found myself as an inpatient in the hospital. And I was only in the hospital for a couple days, maybe 2 or 3 days. And then I was discharged. I think it was some kind of flu. And I remember taking Pepto-Bismol and having butter soup. I think I remember having like a butter soup. I'm serious. That's what I was eating in the hospital bed. And I think I remember eating some Jell-O. So anyway, so yes, I was admitted once for like 2 or 3 days for a stomach ailment. I think it was related to a swimming pool that I went to. Okay. And that was way back in middle school when I was living in Taos, New Mexico. But I haven't been admitted to the hospital since then, thankfully. So I've been doing pretty good. Question number 90. Have you had any serious injuries? And the answer to that question is no, I haven't. I've had some minor injuries. For example, when I was working at Yosemite National Park, I tripped on a ramp while taking out the trash at night. And I sort of broke a bone in my foot. And it was just a small bone. It was a tiny bone. I forget what it was. Maybe it was in my heel or something. Anyway, I did get it x-rayed. I think it was some kind of fracture. But there wasn't any cast put on. And I just had a really hard time putting any weight on the foot. So I used crutches for a time while I was working at Yosemite National Park. And somehow I continued to do well. I think I'm trying to remember what kind of job I was doing. I think I was a busboy. And I took out the trash. Or maybe I was serving ice cream at Yosemite National Park and I took out the trash. It was at nighttime. I would typically work shifts, split shifts. So that means a split shift is a shift where I'd be during the daytime I'd be on for a couple hours, then off for a couple hours, then on for a couple hours. Anyway, I broke my foot. That's like the worst physical injury I've ever had. So anyway, I'm going to start wrapping things up here. I just want to thank you for coming along with my journey today. Thank you for listening to me when it came to my interest in functional imagery training. I'm going to pass that idea along to you as a way to help you achieve your goals and to figure out how you can decide to behave in the future. You know, I use that technique to determine how I want to act at the present and in my arm's length future. Anyway, I just want to say how much I love you, how much I cherish you, how much I am hopeful that we can spend more time together in the future. And I'm really glad that we've got this time together and that Google and YouTube exist so that I can carry this message forward into the future about just how much of how beloved you are to me and how important it is to me that I support you and lift you up and help you achieve your goals and help you develop and grow into the woman that I know you can be. And so anyway, I just want to say that I love you, I cherish you, you know, and there's no obligation for you. You can act however you want to act. I will love you no matter how you behave. My love for you is unconditional, and I really mean that. And my positive